You ever wonder what it takes to make a character in Dungeons and Dragons? Well, I'll tell you what. It takes class, skill, and a little bit of something very nice. Together with the recipe provided by Dungeons and Dragons 5e, you can make a character sheet. Welcome to Enchanted Lore. In today's video, we're going to go over the character sheet for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Here we want to take a look and see how we can break down different aspects of it so that way you know how to fill out this character sheet for the first time. In the upper part, you should be able to quickly fill that out by yourself, as you probably already have an idea as to what type of character you want to play, such as what is their name, what is their race, such as an elf, dwarf, or something else, and what kind of class they are, such as fighter, paladin, cleric, and so forth. With that out of the way, the next section that we want to focus on is that of the ability scores. This is going to be found on the far left-hand side of the character sheet. This is represented by strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. These are the physical and mental characteristics of the character. D&D has a description that I thought is very appropriate for each of these attributes, such as strength measures physical might, dexterity showcases agility, reflex, and balance. Constitution represents health and stamina. Intelligence, reasoning and memory. Wisdom is perceptiveness and mental fortitude. And charisma is confidence, poise, and charm. Depending on what is the ability score, it will either give the character a bonus or a negative to their actions. And the higher the number, the bigger the bonus it gets. And the other thing is to keep in mind is that certain ability scores are very important for certain classes. With that in mind, those with a 10 ability score is viewed as average. So those that have a higher ability score, so let's say if you have an 18 for strength, you are really strong. Versus if you have like a 6 or an 8 for strength, you're kind of a wet noodle. There are 3 ways to generate ability scores, but your dungeon master or game master will need to let you know which of these are their preferred method. So let's take a look at them. The first method is to use a standard array in which you get a 15, a 14, a 13, a 12, a 10, and an 8. So with this sort of standard array, you can then assign them to whatever attribute you want. So, for example, you might put, as a fighter, a 15 strength, and then I might put a 12 dex, and then a 14 constitution, followed by a 10 intelligence, an 8 wisdom, but I'd like to have a 13 charisma. So you will, with a standard array, arrange those numbers in whichever is appropriate for the class that you're trying to play. Wizards of the Coast also made this nice little image in which showcases how they would use a standard array for the different classes. Here in this layout, you can see that kind of the wizard has only an 8 strength, whereas they recommend giving the fighter a 15 strength. The other method is to use random generation, in which you get to roll 4d6s and record the highest 3 numbers. And then you just do this a total for 6 times. So one set of rolls for each attribute, and that randomness is what will get you your scores. I've seen this sometimes produce some really nice high results, like maybe you get lucky and get that 18, but then I've also seen where it gets some pretty ugly results as well. The other method allows you to have a bit of flexibility if you don't mind doing a little bit of math. And that is using the point buy system, in which you have 27 points to purchase your ability scores. Now, unfortunately, you need to reference this table in which it tells you how much each ability score will cost. For example, on this chart, you will see that an ability score of 10 cost 2 points. So if you used and gave yourself a 10 across the board, that would have used up 12 points already. And if you wanted to go up from there, you have to use the appropriate number of points to then increase that difference. But this allows you to have more flexibility in either trying to min-max or just having maybe a more flat, more level, character. Now, I do want to say that with these ability scores, the highest that you can go is 20. Okay, here in this character sheet, you can see that we have chosen to use the standard array. So now, the next step is to adjust our ability scores a little bit. If you are playing with the 2014 set of rules, then you might adjust your ability score depending on your race. For example, if you are playing a elf, you will get a bonus and adjust your dexterity by 2. Same thing if you played a dwarf, you might adjust your constitution by an additional 2. However, with the new version of D&D 5th edition, the 2024 version, in there you get your choice of adjusting the ability score based on your background. Your choice for the background will be either the acolyte, the criminal, the sage, or the soldier. From there, you get to have the choice of increasing one of the attributes by 2 points and another one by 1 point, or increase 3 attributes by 1. Which attributes do you get to increase? Well, it is listed directly with the background. For example, with the sage, you can increase Constitution, Intelligence, or Wisdom, whereas with the soldier, you would increase Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution. Now, depending on the dungeon master, they may just opt to let you pick whichever one attribute to increase by 2 points and one ability score to increase by 1. For our scenario here, let's go ahead and increase strength and let's increase constitution. Okay, we are almost done with the ability scores. But the thing is, we want to make sure we don't rush through this and give it the proper thought, as the ability scores will affect so many different things of your gameplay. So the next step is going to find the ability score modifier. Now, we can use some math to do the calculation, or you could just refer to this simple chart here. Using the ability score and modifier chart, you can see that we have already filled out the character sheet with the corresponding values. The 17 will have a +3, And then if you look at wisdom, since it has an 8, it has a -1 modifier. Now, with this information, we can go ahead and begin to fill out the saving throws and the skills. The saving throws values is the exact same thing as the modifiers that we had just entered. So for strength, you use the 3, for the wisdom, the -1, and so forth. And if you look at the skills, it is the same sort of thought process. As for acrobatics, is going to use the dexterity modifier, and animal handling is using the wisdom modifier, and so forth. The next thing we would like to talk about is the proficiency bonus. Here on the character sheet, you will notice that it is the number 2. This number does not increase until you hit level 5 to where it becomes a 3, or until level 9 where it becomes a +4, and so forth. This is a flat bonus that you will add to any skill or saving throw that you have the proficiency status with. Now the question is, how do you get this proficiency bonus to be applied? Well, that is determined by your class and by your background. For our character sheet, since we are a fighter, we have chosen to have the soldier background. And as you can see here, that because of this background, the following skills we are proficient in, such as athletics and intimidation. And looking at our fighter class, we can see that we also get proficiency with the saving throws strength and constitution, and we get to pick 2 skills to be proficient in. Do notice that you cannot double up on proficiency, so pick something that you don't have. And in our scenario, we chose to be proficient and have animal handling, athletics, history, intimidation. And for those, you just click the little circle there to signify that you have the proficiency bonus. Once that is done, all you will have to do next is increase the score or number that is associated with those skills by an additional 2 to reflect the true number for calculating in the proficiency bonus. So it should look something like this. Now, what is going to happen is whenever you roll those skills, that is the total that you will add with your d20. So in the case, if this character needs to make an athletics check, I would roll a 1d20, and because of all the proficiency and bonuses and because of the attribute, I would add a +5 to that roll. All right, we've made it to this point and we are so close to the end. There are a couple more things that we have to do to wrap it up. So let us begin with the armor class. By default, this is going to be 10 plus your dexterity modifier. So in this case, it is 11 for us. If your character purchases armor or anything of the sorts, then this will be further modified. Your initiative is simply your dexterity modifier, which is a 1 for us. Your passive perception is 10 plus your perception check modifier. And in the case of that, we have a -1 to perception, and so therefore 10 minus 1 is 9. Now for the HP. At first level, we get the maximum amount. In our case, since it is a fighter, we're getting 10 plus our constitution bonus. So 10 plus 2 will give us 12. And in the lower part where it says hit dice, well, we're level 1, so we get 1 hit dice, and then we get a 1d10 because of the class. For the attacks, in that section, well, I pre-purchased a longsword. With that, since that is a melee attack, we're going to calculate that by having the strength modifier plus the proficiency bonus. In this case, it gives us a +5. And due to the nature of this weapon, it is a 1d8 in slashing, which you would just look up in the equipment section. Now, if for some reason I had a longbow or a short bow or anything like that that would give us range, instead we would calculate a range attack by using the dexterity modifier plus our proficiency bonus. Now, with the case of spells, for the spells save DC, that is 8 plus a spell casting ability modifier, which varies depending on the spellcaster, such as some use intelligence, some use wisdom, and some use charisma, plus the proficiency bonus. The spell attack bonus is same thing, the spell casting ability modifier plus the proficiency bonus. Now, for speed, right? So if we are using the 2024 rules, your base speed is 30. It doesn't matter the race. Versus the 2014 version, depending upon the race, if you're a dwarf or an elf or a halfling or human, you will have different speeds dependent on that. Some will be 25, some will be 30. Then the last thing that we'd like to cover is that of starting gear. This is going to be ultimately decided upon by your game master / dungeon master. And in this case, there are different sets of rules on what would be the starting equipment and so forth. So they will determine what would be appropriate. Once you have that, you can add in any little remainder coins or flavors and personalities. In the side there, you can add any special abilities that came as a result of your class or of your race. For example, if you had dark vision for being an elf, or maybe you get fighting surge as a fighter, and so forth. But there's going to be a lot of variations between there, but just wanted to point that out. With that, you basically have a character sheet and are ready to go.